Good afternoon. Welcome to the Willington Board of Education Policy Committee. It is April 30th, 2025. We are calling the meeting to order at 4:01 p.m. It is a Zoom-only meeting. Today, we're going to review policy 2400, the evaluation of the superintendent, and we'll be having some discussion about that today. Oh.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we're taking a look at the current policy, and I'm going to ask Arthur to share some of his observations to get us started, if you wouldn't mind.
You want it on screen?
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
Okay.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I don't have to bounce back and forth.
Yeah, this is the Word version.
So, I mean, essentially, I wanted to address this one. This is something that came up in a board meeting the last time. And um, basically, my biggest thing here is trying to increase the transparency for the people who watch us and observe what we do. So, I mean, my biggest thing is just simply adding a couple of lines to probably further down. I was trying to figure out where it should go, and my idea is it's further down. Just something that says that upon the completion of the vote for the superintendent, the evaluation and if applicable, the board's evaluation by the superintendent will be made available on the schools on the Board of Ed or schools website. And I would put a time frame on there, so it's not that we're looking at months later, but it doesn't have to be. I don't want it to be so restrictive that it has to be, within a day or two, but I also don't want it to go forever and not actually be put up there. Yeah, so if you go down past guideposts, and then you go all the way down to almost just before the end. Yep, go up a little. So there's these two paragraphs here that kind of outline how it all goes. There's the meeting and executive session, and then there's any addendums and all that, and then there's mentions of the objectives for the spring. So my thought would be it would be somewhere in that area, but it really could go. It could go anywhere towards the end of any kind of spot here.
Question. Is Phil, do you know if this appears in other policies by chance, or
What do you mean?
is this is Arthur's statement something that appears in other policies too?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I wondered too with the if CABE, if it's in any of their policies. Just curious. I don't have any objection to it. I'm just wondering if it's something that's done.
I know that the model policy, that subscription, there's nothing in there. There's nothing in the shipment group. That meaning like it's not that it's not in there. It's they don't have an evaluation of superintendent policy as a model. They don't have one.
Oh,
But I
okay.
did not look in CABE. I can see if CABE has some language in there about sharing the evaluation.
Are there any reasons that it would not be a good idea that you would know of?
Are you asking me?
Yes, or anybody really that's here
I mean,
with us.
honestly, and I said this before, is my evaluation is FOIable. It's the only evaluation in district that's FOIable, I believe.
Mhm.
I might be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure teachers are not, and I don't think super administrators are either. I think the superintendent is the only one that is FOIable.
Mhm.
So if someone wanted this, they could get it, and then they could just post it on Facebook. That's why it's like, I think the conversation last time was, the thought would it would be written differently. And if you're gonna go this route, I think that it's very clear on what you're using as your rubric. You know, there's like the American Association of Superintendents. There's rubrics for evaluation for that. If you're using something that Connecticut has, if you're using something that's homegrown, um, that way there's some consistency and people can see what it's tied to. It's not just general comments.
Mhm. Okay,
I
thank
think
you.
what Brianna designed, what we did the last time, I think is very good. So I have no opposition to sticking with that format.
Did I ever see that?
I'm not sure. Yeah, that's Brianna.
Yeah, you had to have.
Well, no, I thought that what we used for evaluation last time was what you said you would have written differently. Those,
Okay, so it was
I think you followed
everybody
the same suit of what we've been doing since I've been here.
every
So I've known about this policy, and when I walked in the door, they're like, "Well, this is how we do it," and so I just said, "Okay, you're my boss. Like I'm not gonna question that." So like the time frame and the format, I think if you're gonna make it public, we should make sure we agree on what that whole document looks like.
What we did last time was I asked some questions and put some examples of kind of what I was exactly asking for in each category. And then people wrote up either a little narrative about it with specific examples and comments, positive strengths and things to work on for each. And some people like bulleted them just to make it a little bit more concise. And then I had some assistance from some members putting it together in a more, like to make sure everybody's comments were included in the narrative part. And then that is what I gave back to the group and what we went over. One of the concerns I had last year with making that public was that when people were asked to fill it out originally, they did not know that that was going to be part of the process. So they probably would have written things differently or not exclude things, but in more professional language is what I meant by that. And so I remember saying something last year too about like maybe we'll do hours and then um, post publicly something that's more of like a summarization of all of that was just another option rather than putting out exactly what we all do and write. So um, that I think is still a good option, or I just want to make sure that all members understand that what they write will be directly quoted and then publicly presented. And if we're going to go like that straight route, then I might think a little bit about the format I used or just making sure that it's very clear to people what was being asked and what specific things were being commented on in those different categories.
So my personal preference on this is that you don't go the summarization route. I think just making everybody aware that this is going to be posted going forward is enough, you know. But I don't think summarizing is a good idea because I think it kind of takes away from what I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to get at as much transparency as possible. And I think that our comments are part of that transparency. It's not just Phil's evaluation. It's I'm not saying you need to identify what board members said what, but I think all those comments should be there almost raw so everyone can see what, you know, what was actually said and versus how we got to where we got. I'm not in favor of summarizing it.
Does that reflect that or no?
Do we think that the format we used last year lends itself to posting it on the webpage? Or would we need to change the format of our evaluation?
I had no problem with last year's going up as it was. Like I would have would have had no issue with that. I was perfectly fine.
Brianna, what do you think?
I don't know.
We could talk about it as a larger group too. We could talk about, mm, what the format of the evaluation would be with our whole group at some point too.
This
to-
is the other part that's part of it. Like, so the two parts that I just highlighted, you can have, so if you're not going to do a summary of sorts, is then when you put those things in, you do have to do a final piece that you have to have some sort of summary.
Right. But so what I think, and Brianna, correct me if I'm wrong, what I think Brianna was getting at was that we had what we did up last year and she wasn't comfortable posting it as it was. She would rather take that document and summarize that whole document and post that. And that's what I'm not in favor of. I agree with number 8 here, where you get all the opinions and then there's a summary of what those opinions are for whatever category. Because what do we have? 5 categories, I think, or something like that. But that's basically what we did, and I'm fine with that summarization. I just don't want what I don't want to do, and what I think is a risk is taking the document, having us fill out one thing, review one thing, summarize one thing, and then that not be what's accessible. What's accessible ends up being some other much smaller summary that kind of glosses over everything and just gives a high view of everything. Because look at it this way. So if someone were to FOI the evaluation from last year, they would get exactly what we did. There would be no there. It's not a different document. It would be exactly what we did. It's exactly what's in the file.
Yeah, I just,
All I'm saying is just make it easier to access and give Phil the opportunity to, or whoever. I mean, obviously this goes forward. Um, the opportunity to actually do the board evaluation and have that be accessible as well.
Brianna, I think one of your things is, one of your points that I'm not sure about, and I'd be curious to know, to ask the board attorney this, from an FOI perspective. If a board member emailed, you're collecting feedback, right? And a board member completes that, I don't know if that's FOIable as well, because it's considered to be part of my evaluation, or is it considered to be, it's because it's not an executive session. So I would assume all of those things are FOIable as well, the individual emails. I would think that'd be the case. It's the only piece that's in executive session is typically because when you're doing the evaluation, there's conversation, and I can provide data, or you could provide data and feedback, and then when it's finalized, that's when it becomes FOIable. I wonder if those comments are not FOIable until after the final evaluation's done. I would just want to confirm that, because that might be something that, just for clarity, as well. Would it be seen as attorney-client privilege type perspective? My gut would be no. It might be private until the evaluation is completely done, but I would want to confirm that with Chris, and that might be something you may consider putting in this policy as well, just so people understand that.
I'm not sure what you mean by that, Phil.
Well, so like you're asking to not have a summary. And I understand what you're saying. The final evaluation, right? It's kind of like think about negotiations, Arthur. We don't share the things that are in negotiations. We only share the final contract, right? We don't share the proposals. Um, I don't think those things are FOIable. I just want to make sure from Chris Cheney's perspective that if you put something in writing, I guess the point is if you write something glowing or you write something negative, it doesn't matter. If it's sent to Brianna as part of the evaluation, I would believe it's FOIable either way. Um, However, it's the final document that you're posting. It's not all of the individual things separately, if that makes sense.
Right. So the document that we used last year had the individual comments on it. They were just anonymized. So it's getting at the same thing. I'm not advocating to change the format because I think it lends itself perfectly to what this would be. It's just, there's the category, there was a cross section of comments, and then there was a summary about those comments. That's perfectly fine to me. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm just going to be really blunt about what I'm talking about. Within my tenure here, there were comments that were written in that were not factual. There was no data to support it. I was told about it, but it did not land in my evaluation. So you would expect your superintendent, if you were going to write something in there, that I'm going to write a rebuttal. So any of those things in there, and that's what's in your policy that should be supported by objective evidence, not subjective. That would be something that would be important as part of the process. Because if there's subjective things in there and they're not supported by any evidence, I would argue they shouldn't be in there.
Fair, but don't you have the opportunity to rebut your evaluation?
I do, um, I do, but that's not. It does say objective evidence in the policy. So I guess that's my point. Like you may not like something that I've done. The board had directed me to do it. Anne was in, the dissenting vote and is really mad that I did it, but I was directed by the board to do it. So Anne can then write in my evaluation, Phil did this and I did not support it. And she can tear me apart about it. But in the end, it was the board decision, if that makes sense. There needs to be an objective approach to it. And if we're going to publish it and it needs to be an agreement, I have no problem with the publishing part of it. I really don't. I just want to make sure it's clear that whatever people are putting forward, it needs to be objective and we need to agree on what those things are. That's my point.
Well, to be fair, we don't need to agree. We get our say, you get your say, and they meet somewhere in the middle. So I'm not. I would think maybe this is just my high hopes here, but I would think that as board members, we'd have a higher standard than to just come forward and use things that are not relevant because pretty much I think everything's relevant, but basically not to just come out and lie and just to get it in there. I have a very tough time believing that would be the case.
I'm not sure that was what I meant, Arthur.
No,
I'm
I understand what you meant, but
I'm saying that the criteria needs to be
right,
mutually agreed upon, not
right,
what you
right.
when you whatever. As long as we agree upon what I'm being evaluated on, that has to be mutually agreed upon. If you write my evaluation and I disagree with it, that doesn't matter. I have no say in that. You get to do my evaluation and you write it the way you want to write it, and then I can respond. What has to be mutually agreed upon per your policy is the process and what I'm being evaluated on. That's all I'm
Okay.
saying.
So you basically you want to just take a look at what's going to be sent for all of us to review and make sure that what's being asked and what's being reviewed is falls in the guidelines of the policy.
Right, we would want to know that
Okay.
in advance, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that.
The document that we used before had a short paragraph about the process that we followed. It listed the district goals. There were opening comments. Then there were things, the specific categories were job functions, community and stakeholder relations, personnel relationships, professional leadership, business matters, personal qualities, and then there were closing comments. So those were the things that were assessed. Those are similar to what had been done in the past, and they reflect a rubric that I looked at from CABE, and then something that another town uses too. I mean, really, this document is evidence of how we think Phil is doing. And of course, it has to be tied back to district goals. That's why those are on there. And there were some like mention of things that he really excels at, some things that some of us thought could use some improvement, which I think is typical of any evaluation
Oh, yeah.
for anybody. And it
Sure.
should be on our own also. Okay. So you really don't want to do the summary thing, Arthur. I get that. I think that last time I just really was not comfortable putting this up, just particularly because we didn't tell people that it was going to be. I think it's only fair to tell our board members that that's going to happen prior to them writing and filling things out. So
That is
it's
fair.
great that we're addressing this now and getting it all settled before I send that survey out again and ask people to put in their 2 cents.
You have, we could say within our text, if one or two people felt something and, 5 people felt something else, could we say that, present it that way? 2 members felt that blah, 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 and 5 members felt that. So I'm wondering how we handle if we have any dissenting opinions. Do we just spell them both out?
It's sounding more to me like we're just taking exactly what people write and putting our comments, just stacking them, not rearranging anybody's words or changing anything.
Or
So
even grouping, not even
no,
grouping,
not anymore. So
just
I would,
handling them as individuals.
I would
Okay.
eliminate the bullet option. I mean, if people wanted to do that as a draft for themselves, just to make like an outline and then type up their narrative, that would make sense to me, but I'll ask everybody to do like a paragraph style narrative instead, and then that's just going to copy paste and go right in here, and they will be anonymous, so I'll have to remind people to try to keep out any identifying factors if possible. But that's kind of what I'm hearing is if you
So-
want like authentic what people really think and what people really said, then that's probably the most like honest, honorable way to do it.
So you probably
Agree,
need,
Arthur?
Yeah, no, I'm fine with it.
you probably
Okay.
need to change then number 3, the evaluation should be a composite of the individual board members' opinions.
It has to have well, it doesn't have to have, but it has the opening and the closing comments. So that could be a place where the general overall things
Yeah.
are put together. So I don't know if you want to say that I mean, obviously they're not completely put together anymore, but those 2 sections probably would be. And everybody had a chance to look at it prior to our executive session meeting. So, like edits could be made. And then I did ask a few people like, hey, this is what this says. Is this what you meant or whatever? So I can do some like editing suggestions that way and see if people want to change what they wrote or if they meant what they said and so on. I'm comfortable with doing like the editor part too. So how do we need it? Where is that part of the policy where it says that it's gonna be a composite?
Guide
Maybe the
post number
last
Number 3.
paragraph of
Evaluation
that
should be a
section.
composite. The board as a whole should meet. So the evaluation should include include, I don't know how you want to say that about the opening and the closing. I mean, maybe it doesn't have to say that at all anymore. What do you guys think?
I don't think you need to spell out in the policy what the evaluation needs to look like, because I think that can change from chair to chair and constitution to constitution.
So you just want
But
to eliminate that whole first part and then say the board as a whole should meet, blah, blah, blah.
the first part of what?
Okay,
First,
so
where
it,
are you?
She's basically
Roman
cutting the
numeral
gray.
2, guidepost number 3.
Oh,
It's
I
on
see.
the second page there. So we could cross out the evaluation should be a composite of the individual board members' opinions, but the problem with that is it is a composite of what we
Right,
think, it's just not rearranged.
right.
So yeah, leave it.
Yeah, everybody's opinions are in there. That's your composite. It's not changed to
Not summarized.
kind of it's not changed to summarize.
If that's how we're going to use that, then that's fine. It includes everybody. Does it say somewhere? I'm sorry, I'm just looking at this again. Anything about how everyone should have the opportunity, because I did not get feedback from everybody about everything last time. I mean, you're not required to do it, I suppose.
You mean after you've compiled the end report and you sent it out for everybody to look it over? Is that what you're talking
I did
about?
not
Amy?
have 100% participation from the get-go.
Oh, even submitting comments.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, I guess we don't need to have that as a requirement. It's helpful when everybody does, but it's not something you have to do. Everything we do is volunteer, so we probably shouldn't say you have to do anything, really.
I think if you use what we used last year, I don't think you have to make any changes to the fundamentals of this policy other than make sure that that's what make sure that Phil's okay with how that's laid out as far as the framework goes, and then just add it in there that it'll be published. I because I looked through this and I don't I'm not I guess I'm not sure why we're looking to change the things that I don't think need to be changed.
I'm
I
not
don't-
trying to change any of it. I just want to make sure it makes like that's. You said too that you wanted to put a time frame.
Yeah, that part, yes.
here. Where would that go?
So now that I'm looking at it, I think it might have to go in one of the guideposts because it talks about the whole setup of the evaluation, and there's a paragraph afterwards. The superintendent should have an opportunity to evaluate the board, and I think possibly after that paragraph should be, upon the completion of the superintendent vote, both the superintendent's evaluation and the board evaluation, if applicable, will be made available on the school website before the next board meeting or something along those lines.
So in here, Arthur, you're saying?
No, go up. Sorry, go up.
Guidepost, you said. Make a 9.
No, see the paragraph under 8 where it says superintendent has the opportunity to evaluate the board.
Yep.
I think after that paragraph is where you add it, because that includes everything of the guideposts of the evaluation. It also includes the superintendent's opportunity to evaluate, and then, it lets everybody know that everything, whatever is after it's all settled and voted on, when when it actually would technically be public, uh, then it'll be posted.
This is just raw. I'm just writing.
Mhm.
And you were recommending that we include the publishing of our evaluation also?
If applicable, yes.
What did you say?
If applicable, the evaluation of the board by the superintendent. Because so the way this is, and the reason I say that is the way this policy is structured, we have to do a superintendent evaluation. The superintendent doesn't have to do a board evaluation. So that's why I put the if applicable after the board evaluation.
The one thing that's not clear in here, um, thinking about timing, is when I'm actually supposed to get your evaluation of me, um,
Bye.
when I get to see it. And meaning, like, is the first time I'm supposed to see it at that meeting. And I think that's important because, quite frankly, that doesn't give me the opportunity to respond, right? If someone says, "Oh yeah, I forgot about that," and I give them the data to say, "Oh, you did do that," I think that's always helpful. That might be something you consider putting in here about that, once you have it all gathered, that you presented a week before, discussion. So I have the opportunity to pull things together. If someone says, I'd like to see this data, what do you have for it? I could do that. Because I wouldn't feel comfortable doing this, without seeing it and knowing, if that makes sense. If every comment is going to be in there, I can't really counter it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I have no problem with you. I have no problem with us finalizing a document and then having it sent out, having you review it and the chance to rebut it, and then we do the actual meeting.
Because you could build in a 9 here that just says something like that.
Last year you had it before we met.
Yeah, what's weird is it's always been like, okay, what am I supposed to do with this? My evaluation process has never been clear. It's like walk in and let's have a conversation about it at that time. And so that's where it's like, I've never known if I'm supposed to bring, additional information. I was told not to gather more information because it wasn't needed. And again, for the most part, my evaluations have been known. Like, I know what I need to improve upon. That's not been a secret. Um, and I know what I've done well typically. So, but it's always good to have that information to support.
So could people reach out to you to ask you questions
I think as part of the
they-
evaluation, they could, yeah.
while they're doing their write-up part?
Yes, always.
Because I think once it's done, if there's anything in there that you want to comment on, that's what you would do after the fact, right?
Right.
In that rebuttal piece.
It would be good for Phil to have the time to look it over before our
Mhm.
executive session. If he wanted to bring some data to that meeting or, to have a chance to prepare what he wants to say. Um,
And this is draft. It's just, it's raw thoughts in my brain. I haven't looked at the policy, but
But so then are we gonna edit? Or just
that's up to
have the
you.
documents together, you know, kind of like how you make comments about minutes. It doesn't, you don't go back and change the minutes. It just like becomes a part of the next round of minutes.
No, I don't, that's up to you if you want to do it because it's not a signed document yet. Like if you,
Where
if you,
the,
I
if
mean, you can
someone's,
make it you know, if the person is like, oh yeah, that's right, I forgot about that. I want to adjust what I wrote. But they shouldn't be required.
oh, they don't have to.
Yeah,
Correct.
no.
Right. Right.
but I think that's the beauty of Phil having the opportunity to bring data or to talk about something. Um, and then I think if it led to a change in the document, I think that's okay. Like Phil said, until it's signed, till we all agree on it and it's all signed.
The more I think about this, the more I look at my own evaluations in my job, and I'm not told in advance. I have my meeting with my boss, and she goes through all the strengths, goes through all the weaknesses, and that's it. And what that's based on is the job done up until that evaluation. So I'm not necessarily advocating for Phil not to get it early. I'm advocating for it not to be changed. The early part gives Phil the chance to do any rebuttal. I'm comfortable with that. I'm not overly comfortable with sending Phil the evaluation or sending the superintendent the evaluation early, having them come back with something and then something be changed on that document.
Yeah, that's why I said if people want to fact check or make sure they have something right from the get-go, they can ask him or we can ask each other, hey, do you remember that time? And then it
Yeah,
is what it is, what we give him. And then from there, that's why I was asking, like, are then we gonna go edit stuff or?
I don't think so. Yeah, I agree with you, Brianna. I think that I'm fine it going out a week early for the purposes of any kind of rebuttal. I just don't think it should be changed.
Does my
I
addendum
think
get posted with it, with my evaluation?
sure,
Say so.
yeah, of course.
Well, there's misinformation in the evaluation.
What's that, Ann?
What if there is misinformation in the evaluation or something that's misunderstood or something like that?
So then we're adding an appendix to the whole entire thing. I don't know. I guess that,
So
right?
That would be in my addendum. That's what that
yeah,
I think that's why I have
Okay.
the opportunity
Okay.
to address something. I mean, that's I don't, it's a protection for everybody, right?
Mhm.
It's a protection for the board and it's a protection for me to make sure that people understand someone said something and that there's evidence. And maybe the evidence says one thing to a board member and something else to the superintendent, right? But it allows the opportunity to be in the document and there could be disagreement and that's okay.
Mhm.
It's just that's what the addendum does.
Okay, good.
So I'm going to ask a really bold question about transparency. And I don't have a problem with this going online. I really don't. Even if it were, not good, I've always said, I would step away if I wasn't the right fit. I think people want to know who's saying what. So when you do your evaluation of me, if you're going to put every comment, does it make sense to have a section for each board member? Does that make sense? I don't know.
so if you're asking me personally, that's fine by me because I stand by all my words. But I suggested making it anonymous for the comfort of other board members who may not feel that way. So if you want to put a name to the words, I'm all
Yeah.
for it. If you want to keep it anonymous, yeah, I'm fine with that too.
It's just something to be thoughtful about. I'm not sure if there's a right way or a wrong way to do that. It just, I don't know. I don't know if it's right or wrong. I don't know if it puts a board member in a bad spot. You know what I mean? Not with me, but, publicly, I don't know what the answer is.
I would agree with that.
Because realistically, and I know this, I mean, right, you go through the evaluation process, there's a request for a contract extension. The request for a contract extension should reflect my evaluation, right? And so if someone doesn't believe that my contract should be extended, that should be clear in my evaluation, right? And which is fine. I think we see it in a vote. We're required to put in a vote the names of who voted what way. Does it make sense to do that in the evaluation or not? I don't know. Or is it does it get too cumbersome?
I mean, the other part of it is too, I'm sure anybody who pulls this down and who pays attention could probably connect the dots if it was anonymous as to who said what.
Yeah.
So there's that part of it too. But again, however you want that to go, I'm fine with.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it by board member. I would still put it by category and then do some like initials at the end, and then at the beginning, make sure to list the members and their initials and how they would be.
Yeah. I was just saying, Brianna, in each section, if each board member is going to respond to each section, is that something that should be done or not? I don't have a feeling either way about it. But again, if we're talking about transparency, is that something people would want to see or not? I don't have a feeling either way.
I'm fine with somebody reading what I write and knowing it's my words. Um, in an
And see,
election
that's
year, if I run again, I want to make sure that people want me to be a part of a certain group because I do a good job, not because they do or do not agree with what I think about how someone is doing. So I'm not trying to make like a hard and fast argument either way. That's something that I'm thinking about too.
If
right.
we're talking about transparency, then a person reading it should know who says what, because that's being completely transparent.
Yeah.
You know, as soon as we start making it anonymous, then it's not so transparent.
Okay. It puts kind of some pressure on everybody participating.
More pressure than being
Yeah.
on
I don't
camera
want,
every month. I mean,
yeah. Well, I don't want
Raising
people
your hand,
to
saying
like
yes or no. Yeah.
be comparing their work to somebody else's. Like it does not need to be, I don't want it to
but
become something like that. We're just a group and saying our piece. Maybe yours is 20 sentences long. Maybe I have three, it's that I don't want that to come into play either.
right, but so I mean, look at it this way, Brown. If we all do it individually and it just gets compiled, and then we all see it at the end, I think it should be just clear that any edits you want to make are edits of your own and not because somebody wrote 3 paragraphs in one category and you wrote 2 sentences. Maybe you don't feel strongly about that category, but that doesn't make a difference. I
Yeah.
mean, you write whatever you write.
I'll just make sure, like, as part of my explanation about how we're going to do things, I just would want to tell people that. So I'll just add it to my list of things to tell people. Okay. What else?
So Would you foresee the conversation about contract extension at the same meeting? Or would you foresee that changing and a follow-up to that?
I would do it all together.
Yeah, I don't see why it would change.
Okay.
Why?
I'm just processing. I don't know. I guess Arthur was asking if I was gonna, or mentioning before, if I was gonna get it early or not. If I'm not going to get it early, and there's some things in there that I disagree with, and I want the opportunity to share feedback, I'm not so sure I would ask for.
No, you are going to get it early. I'm fine with you getting it early. I just didn't want things to be changed based on you getting it early. That's
Okay.
all. Yeah, no, you'd get it a little bit early. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think
Either
that's it provides
party,
a fair process, so I can provide information if there's more in it, because you could still have the statement in the evaluation. But I wouldn't want to ask for an extension. Like, we got 4 people that believe something happened, and I've got proof to show, objective evidence to say it didn't. I wouldn't pop on camera and say, hey, can you extend my, contract?
Yeah. Right. No, I understand. But no, absolutely.
If there was that much discrepancy, I mean, do we have the option of holding off on that part? If you're like, I'm really not comfortable with where we're at, I really I need some time to do my thing.
to respond. Yeah.
I,
I mean,
I
that would
really,
be fine with me too. I don't see why that's a thing. I mean, if we all are pretty much on the same page about how to proceed, then great, do it.
I don't think it hurts to have the option if either party feels they need a little more time to make that decision. I think in a regular year, with everything going well, everything typically, it could all happen within one session, but it probably wouldn't hurt to have the option to um, revisit it at another date if either
yeah,
party felt they needed to do that.
I asked that too, because that impacts when if I ask for a raise, it's typically July 1, right? So that's why timing matters.
Yes.
Yeah, we're
But
gonna
we
do
More
it
went
time.
next time.
we went late last year and we went retro.
Right,
So
as long as the board would be okay with that, I think it's reasonable. I think any superintendent, you should have a sense of where you're at along the way. I mean, I do believe that, and so if there's a major surprise, I would be surprised for myself with the current board, and this just provides a level of security for someone to pull together data to show something else, and be prepared for that conversation and evaluation. It doesn't mean you're going to try and counter everything that's negative, because there are things that a superintendent doesn't get right. And, you have to have the opportunity to change that in the future. You can't go back. But no, I think that's good.
And then you have that first opportunity for that week, to look it over and
Mhm.
collect any data to bring to the group meeting.
So how does that, or does that change what we kind of drafted to put in there about things being posted by the next meeting?
well,
Or
it's dependent on the vote. So if Phil wants to push out the vote for the contract vote, then it would push it out just by nature of that's the determiner of when it becomes public is as after that vote. So if the vote gets pushed out to September and it goes retro or however it works, then you've got from till the October meeting to have it posted. You know what I mean? So that's why I think that having that paragraph designed that way is good because it doesn't give a time frame. It doesn't say when the valuation is complete. It has a very not categorizable, very distinct uh motion essentially that triggers it to go.
Also, I think the signatures indicate that it's complete.
Yeah.
So once it has been signed off, And then that would assume too that the contract has been extended and
Not
that all
necessarily.
of that no, not
Nope.
necessarily.
My
Okay,
evaluation is separate than my contract.
okay,
My signature on the evaluation simply says that process is done. You have stated your piece. I have shared my addendum and the evaluation process is done. From that point, then there becomes a conversation about a contract extension. If I so choose to ask that, or you so choose to ask that. If neither one asks that, I have a 2-year contract.
So then I guess should the trigger for the timing of the publishing be the signature, or should it be the contract vote?
No, I think you're right. I believe in that. That's why I think I put here that the trigger is the signature.
Okay,
Because really, the publishing is my addendum along with your document, and the document is signed. Once that's done, whether there's a contract extension or not, that document goes on is posted.
okay, okay.
And you know what I'm gonna do? Posted to the district website. I'm just gonna say within 48 hours. Is that fair? 24 hour? I don't want to say
My
it's gonna happen that night. You know what I'm saying? Like,
my original thought was 7 days, but I was
okay,
also going
okay.
to give a lot of leeway to next board meeting. If everyone's comfortable with 7 days, then I think that's fine. Because it's really just posting. It's done. It's really just
Yeah.
going through the motions of posting it.
Yeah.
it has to be typed up or any of that type of,
It
No.
should be done.
that should all
No.
be done, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're just going to post the PDF or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'd say PDF.
Right. I mean, realistically, it might be done the night of the meeting. I mean, the meeting might adjourn. The chair would sign it, the superintendent would sign it, and then, realistically, it's just scanned and posted the next day. It
Yeah.
just gives us enough time to get through
Right.
it.
And the
Would
contract.
be an
agree-
addendum attached to, if,
Yep. Yep.
or based on
That's all part of the
conversation.
evaluation. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And the contract agreement will be a agenda item.
Correct. It would be a separate agenda item, which is typically on there, and then we could always say, I'm choosing not to have this conversation right now if the boards accept that, or the board could say the same thing. We'd like to postpone this conversation, or yes, we'd like to have this conversation now.
When we do the evaluation part, you mean?
Well, so you typically in when you do evaluation, you talk about those things like, hey, the work is going. We would like to see this. We're gonna, we'd like to keep your work going, extend your contract for a 3rd year. These are the types of things we'd like to see for your goals in those 3 years. That's typically how you do it, and that would be a trigger to say, when we come out, I'm going to say, can I have a contract extension for an additional year? If the board was saying, look, I'm not so sure this is going in the direction we want, that's a trigger to say there's not going to be a conversation about it, and you choose to continue moving along your agenda, and there's no discussion about that.
Doesn't some of the contract conversation happen in executive?
It does. It's because it's typically aligned to the goals, right? Like, we want to keep this work going. We'd like to extend this out by year 3. We want to do this. Well, if you're starting to talk about by year 3, we know what that means.
I'm just thinking we might have an executive session to discuss the evaluation and then have a separate one about the contract at a different meeting if there's needs to be time in between.
And typically my contract extension doesn't have to be. I don't think executive session. I would have to check on that.
No, because your contract's public.
Right.
So it's if you're asking for the extension or the raise or whatever it is, it's a change to the contract. It's adjusting dates and adjusting the amount. So it's not anything that I don't think that's necessarily an executive session discussion. I mean, maybe, but I wouldn't think so. You could. Again, again, because once that's over, even if we did do it in executive session, once it's over, it's out there anyway.
Public. Yeah, right.
And we must have done it, we did it together last time,
Mhm.
so that's why I was wondering.
And
Okay,
it might, I don't remember how we write the agenda, but typically it's like evaluation, contract extension, or, they go hand in hand. Typically, they go hand in hand.
Mhm.
If you don't get a good evaluation, you typically don't extend your contract, right?
But we would have to have our discussions about percentages and
If there was going to be a raise there.
other things to talk about, yeah.
Mhm.
But that would just happen as part of the board meeting then?
If there was going to be that discussion, yes. Otherwise, I think my contract has a salary in it, and that it would remain at that.
So we're not renegotiating your contract. We're just
The only thing you do is extend it. So
extending
unless
it one
we,
way.
like,
Okay.
last time and actually recently, I think we did some things in my contract, about, buyout of sick days, right? That you did that because it's a change to my contract. It's, if you just do a contract extension with, an increase, that's typically just pretty simple stuff and you just go. But if you were going to do a major rewrite, you wanted to adjust something, that's going to be an executive session, and it's going to be more of just a negotiation discussion.
Mhm.
So I don't see, I know that you're talking about a change in policy here. I don't see that you cannot do this now. I wouldn't have an issue with it. It's not like you're breaking policy, meaning if you're gonna change a policy, right, it'd have to go to the full board for a read. I think you should do these things now. If that makes sense.
Will you move it for first read or?
So if you're ready, you could move it for first read, but whether you are going to come back. So the policy doesn't always have every single detail about process in it, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't work that way. So it just has the general guidelines of what you must do. So for you to say, I'm going to get it a week ahead, I think you could do that now. I already have the ability to write the addendum. It's already in the policy, and the posting of it, as long as, I think that was more about, again, because of FOI, I think that was more about making sure every board member knows when they're going to provide the feedback for my evaluation, that it's clear that it will be published. So I think you could do all of those things now and still go back. You're just adding these things, if that makes sense, and you would just do an update. You still need to do the policy reads just like you normally do, but you could implement these things now. You're not really, it's just adding more detail to policy, but you could do it now. Does that make sense?
Kind of. I would want this or some notification of this to go to the full board for our next meeting. Just so everybody's on the same page, whether or not we have to do a traditional policy approval by the full board, or we're just adding these things. I still would want everyone to be aware of it.
Yeah. You could put it on for first read next time with the understanding like, hey, this is not significant change in the policy. We've already talked about this. We're just saying we're going to do these things, and I don't think it's an issue, to be honest with you. Again, it's FOIable. Like,
Mhm.
you're just letting people know, you're giving them the advanced warning that whatever you put in writing is going to go into the evaluation, and it's
It'll be more easily accessible.
yeah.
And we could vote in June. We could do the first read in May and vote in June. And then it would even be voted upon by the time we're ready to implement it.
Well, you'd be
If we-
implementing in June. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
it's really just about the posting part that we changed or added, right?
Right, it was the posting part and just some of the, again, it's minor stuff.
Right.
Yeah, so we're just gonna still proceed because that's actually after the fact anyway.
Right, and the key to this is of the why is the evaluation process is agreed upon by the board and the superintendent. We are both agreeing on this process. Right? I mean, I think that's what we're getting at.
I'm fine with it. I looked up our previous agenda. So the superintendent evaluation was part of our July 9th meeting, and it was just number 11 on the agenda.
Okay.
I think we went to the executive session for it, but it doesn't, our agendas don't spell that out. So,
Yeah, sometimes
all.
I think we write potential executive session.
yeah, but it's just number 11 on this agenda, and there's no additional item about contract or anything. So
Okay.
it's all just together.
We're gonna try to beat that date this time.
Now that we
Okay.
know what we're doing better, right?
Hmm?
Yeah.
That's what it's about, just improving the process.
Yeah.
All right. You good?
I think so.
All right. If you're good, Brianna, you can adjourn.
All right, we're
Good
gonna go
call.
ahead and adjourn this meeting at 5:02 PM. Thank you, everybody, for your participation. I have some emailing to do.